We have a titled lecture, perhaps one of our most exciting, if not the most exciting, Healing the World. We've definitely gone through so much over the last several months, first with the pandemic, and then with all the other chaos with the rioting and the looting and the protesting, and seemingly a lack of leadership. The world seems to be in true chaos and in darkness. And hopefully tonight we could shed some light and some direction. And we have two extraordinary speakers. We have Dr. Avi Rosenberg, who literally has been tremendous over the last several months. He's one of the leading doctors, literally on the forefront on the battle against the pandemic. I can tell you that firsthand, we had one of our members who was on a respirator and was given, we had him on the second week of our classes. He was given only a 10%, if that, chance of survival. They gave the family no hope. And immediately I was recommended to call Dr. Rosenberg, and Avi took our phone call 24/7. It did not matter when we called him. He was available for myself, for the families, and I am one of only hundreds of people who call on Dr. Rosenberg for direction, for medical advice, and literally he has his finger on the pulse of everything that's going on. And I can tell you firsthand that he has helped guide people with medication and other advice that has been truly life-saving. So I thought, who better than to talk about healing when the world needs it now more than ever? And we also have Rabbi Levi Jacobson, who will be coming on after. Why this week of all nights to choose the topic of healing? Well, in addition to all of the circumstances that I just explained, where the world needs this now more than ever, in 1984, the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, initiated a campaign that every single person should study daily the works of the Rambam. The Rambam was a renowned scholar. He was also a physician who brought healing to the Jewish people at that time. And he was appointed the personal physician of the Sultan of Egypt and Syria. And we know that when it comes to healing, it's important to have a good and true and complete healing of body. And as important is having a healing of the mind and healing of the soul. So the Rambam was able to mix and master his Talmudic knowledge and his science, his medical knowledge, to bring healing in his time. And hopefully, as the Rebbe had advised us to study each day the Torah, we call upon Dr. Rosenberg to please give us, from the teachings of Maimonides, from the inspiration of the Rebbe, to explain to us what would Maimonides prescribe at a time like this? What would the Rebbe inspire us to do going through this turmoil that we find ourselves in? And it happens to be that for those who studied every single day the Maimonides, Rambam, so for those who study it 3 chapters a day, they complete it in a year. For those who do 3 chapters, they finish it in 3 years. And tonight is the night that both coincide. They merge, both those who study it 1 chapter and those who study it 3 chapters. Tonight is the night, tonight and tomorrow is the day that we complete the Rambam. So I asked Dr. Rosenberg to give us a little bit, a glimpse into the light, into the life of the Rambam, to the life of Maimonides, and to share with us some perhaps fascinating tidbits into his teachings and to his medical prowess. And then I asked Rabbi Levi Jacobson from Toronto, Canada, to explore some of the teachings of the Rambam, but especially focus on why and what Maimonides chose to conclude his magnum opus, his legendary work of Yad HaChazaka. He concludes it with the laws of Mashiach, and to bring that theme home to each and every one of us, because we know that we cannot put our trust and faith in mankind. The only one who can truly bring this world to a state of peace and tranquility and prosperity is Hashem through the coming of Mashiach. So without further ado, Dr. Avi Rosenberg, who serves as a leading renal and pediatric pathologist and cell biologist at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland, and again, who's been a true friend and advisor to so many during this pandemic, I ask you to kindly share with us tonight on the theme of healing the world now more than ever. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Andruzier. Thank you for all the putting all the organizational efforts into this and introducing me to a whole new world and meeting all of your friends via this format. So this is a really auspicious day. We're about to complete the 39th cycle of the annual study of the Rambam. And this is particularly the halachic works, the legal writings of the Rambam, which are discrete from both his medical writings and from his philosophical efforts. And so whatever is in the legal writings, in the 1,000 chapters that are studied on this annual cycle, are imbued with legal implications, which is very curious because throughout the work, there are reflections to some degree of contemporary philosophy, and similar, and as well to medical and scientific mores of the time. And so a little bit of background on the Rambam, Maimonides, and his time. Is we have to understand that Maimonides was in Egypt at the time, throughout much of his writing career and his academic career, so to speak, and practiced as a physician only as a second line. His first line of effort was that of a businessman. He stayed back while his brother David traveled the world, and then an unfortunate circumstance resulted in his brother's death at sea while crossing the Red Sea, and Maimonides found himself without a profession, without business opportunity, and to make income for his family. And so he turned to what he considered, and what the Times considered, the highest order of scientific endeavor, the most evolved of scientific endeavors, and that was medicine, and through the process of healing. And in very short order, became renowned throughout the medieval world as an influential healer, as a man of science and medicine, and subsequently as a philosopher, and in our world of Torah, as an immense Torah scholar who had such an organized mind that every aspect of his legalistic writings are open with a summary of how many chapters, how many commandments, and positive and negative, and so on and so forth. This is a reflection of a most organized mind. The Rebbe reflects on this organizational paradigm in the Rambam and uses this to suggest that, in fact, this highlights the imperative behind the study of the Rambam. And the Rebbe was particularly impactful in introducing organized daily study practices. And I'll connect this introduction of organized daily study practices with sort of the complexities of our time, and then segue finally to a point in the last day of the study of Rambam in the last final chapter of the Rambam of Maimonides, and what I believe Rabbi Jacobson will then transition to a discussion of the relevance of the Messianic times, which can never be understated in especially these times. So the Rebbe introduced several aspects of daily study, including the study of Chumash with Rashi, part of the so-called Chitas trilogy, which is part of daily study to include Tehillim, the Psalms of David, and finally the Tanya. In 1984, the Rebbe introduced 3 different possibilities to study the Rambam, and these 3 different study opportunities were intended that anybody, man, woman, or child, should be able to have a grasp of the scope of Jewish law as Maimonides brought it down. And when you look at these 4 volumes that the Rebbe gave us, the Rebbe had great intention in giving us very wholesome work, very wholesome material that encompassed the entirety of the 5 books of Moses with a principal commentary, Rashi, and this reflected a message from the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, in which he said that the Torah portion, something can be excerpted from the Torah portion to live with the time, the living Torah, the weekly Torah, the daily Torah, living with the daily Torah. Then there is the Psalms, which is divided by the day and is really perhaps one of the most comprehensive works on hope, salvation, and through that we have a complete philosophical approach to living as Jews. We have the Tanya of Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, which is apportioned by the day throughout the year. And this is the most precious of philosophical works, as it gives us a practical way in daily living. And so these were the first 3 volumes that the Rebbe introduced to us for daily study and for daily practice. And they are each wholesome and can be completed on a yearly cycle. And then in 1984, the Rebbe introduced Rambam. And I'd like to relate the introduction of that Rambam to these complex times and a final closing statement from the Rambam in the final chapters. The Rambam is writing about the times of Mashiach and wars and kings in the Messianic time. And in the second to last chapter, in paragraph 4, he introduces the concept and says that and this is Maimonides, who was a uber rationalist, and he was celebrated and is celebrated as such by much of the Jewish world. And he writes that nevertheless, the intent of the creator of the world is not within the power of man to comprehend, for his ways are not our ways, nor are his thoughts our thoughts. And in order to accomplish this, he continues that this will come about when the entire world becomes filled with the mention of Mashiach, Torah, and mitzvahs. When we think about the complexity of the mitzvahs and how many of them we can actually accomplish, we realize that it's really only a minority of mitzvot that we can accomplish and practice today. In reality, with the absence of the Mashiach, with the absence of the temple, we have no practical, functional way of performing the mitzvahs. However, through the study of the Torah, and in particular through the study of Maimonides, the book of Maimonides in the Mishnah Torah, which encompasses the entirety of the Torah. Through the course of a year, we have the opportunity to hold within our hands the entire scope of Torah study and Torah practice. And in fact, Maimonides begins Mishnah Torah with Hilchos Yesodei Torah, the fundamental principles of Torah, transitions to Hilchos Deos, which incorporate the teachings that Maimonides foresaw would keep a person in sufficient good health to be able to perform all of God's commandments. And this is a fascinating concept that, and is probably unique in Maimonides, wherein he had a dedicated section to health and well-being. Before anybody wrote a book on preventative medicine, before there was a book on vaccines, before there was a book on dieting and wholesome eating and exercise, Maimonides already incorporated this, not in the last chapters, not somewhere buried in the middle, but as a fundamental set of chapters to open up and guide one's way in the entirety of the performance and the fulfillment of all the mitzvahs. So this is the power of the study of Rambam, in particular as it relates to holding all of the mitzvahs, those which can be performed in action, those which can be performed by inaction, or must be performed by inaction, and those which can only be performed today through the action of study. And this is the power that the Rebbe gave us, a study to do this every day. But this relates to a more general concept that I think is important in the context of our current global situation, a global pandemic that has decimated populations, that has taken away so many of our elders in our various communities. And this is a message of resilience. Many have the ability, and human nature is to have this ability to be resilient, to overcome whatever comes our way, and any obstacle, we can wake up the next morning and the sun will rise. However, for many, we need tools. And one tool that helps overcome obstacles and builds resilience is a continuous form of study, and something that you know that every day, same as the sun rises, and same as the day is renewed every day, we have a renewed study of Torah. And so when we have what to hold on to, and we know that there's the centrality of Torah study, and the whole world is on wheels, we have the stability of a regular apportioned Torah study that keeps us grounded every day. And the study of Maimonides in all its forms, both in Hebrew and all its various translations through Chabad.org and other websites, is something that everybody can engage in and really creates clarity throughout one's daily living. The last few months were a very complicated set of months, and with multi-dimensional sets of challenges. On a personal note, I would venture to say that the only resilience I was able to muster was through some degree of continuity in study. That I knew that every day there were 3 services a day that I had to pray, and that there was several daily study markers that I had to achieve. Were it not for those, I'm not sure how the last few months would have been grounded. And I'm forever grateful by the insight and the wisdom of our Rebbe to put forth such continuity in study, without which I truly am not sure how every day would have gone by. But we also look towards our mentors and our models. And so some background on myself and where I come from and where I transitioned to. I grew up in Brooklyn in a home that dedicated that I was going to be commissioned to Torah study under the tutelage of the Tenker Rav Zefrein Levracha, Reb Shlomo Zalman Friedman of Brooklyn. And he really played a significant and pivotal role in much of my education, in which schools I went to, and in guiding me as I went along the path in Torah study. And when I expressed an interest in medicine, he said to me that there are 5 prerequisites to go to medical school. Everyone talks about the prerequisites of biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, and physics. But you have to immerse yourself in the study of Hilchos Refuah, the laws of healing, and the laws of the Shabbos, so that when you're at a time when you'll have to be involved in life-saving matters, you will be grounded in Torah values. And that highlighted a very fundamental point to me, that to be a physician, to be a Torah observant physician, is a multimodal and multidimensional prospect. And you can fulfill all the prerequisites required in an undergraduate education and still be not successful as a observant Torah heeding physician. And so the Rambam is perhaps the central figure in our history who demonstrated what it is to be a multidimensional, multimodal figure and to be successful in all those paths. And as a physician, it's something that I aspire to. I know that I can never achieve near the greatness or the organized mind of the Rambam, but he set forth certainly a clear path for those of us who are involved in the healing art to move forward in a Torah conscious approach to healing. And so on a day when we're about to celebrate the Rambam through his Torah, which is really the ultimate celebration of any being, we also celebrate our ability to exist and inspire others in the world. As a short note, and something that I think can serve as a form of inspiration, is that I serve also as a mohel. I do ritual circumcision. And in my everyday practice as a mohel, we say at the time of the bris that Elijah, Malach HaBris, the angel of circumcision, stands to my right. He holds me under and girds me under my right arm to help me perform the circumcision. And many a time when I come in, I say that at the time of the bris, my first assistant, my surgical first assistant, is in fact Elijah. We know that Eliyahu will also play a most significant role in the ultimate redemption. But many a time when I say this, I realize during the course of the circumcision why it is that I need a malach, an angel, standing by my side. And I try to be mindful every day as I go through life that there is an angel, a malach, standing beside me. And in my role as a healer, I am simply a communicator of the healing art, but that there is a malach to the side of me that is putting sometimes the words in my mouth even. And I found that most especially during this most recent crisis, when I would get a call that was beyond my pay grade and perhaps the pay grade of anybody else who had to make the call. And somehow the right words were found and the right direction was found. And ultimately a physical redemption was achieved such that healing was initiated and people got better. So I would encourage everybody on this call to take a moment as you're walking through your daily life and think for one moment, what did you accomplish in your day? What decisions did you make during your day that perhaps you could not have made on your own without that malach, small or big, beside you, pushing you to make that decision? And with that, we fulfill the commandment to recognize, as the Baal Shem Tov said, the presence of God in every step, the presence of God in every decision, and that not even a blade of grass moves in a wind without a malach, without an angel pushing it one way or the other. As we buffet through this world, we're grounded through messages of resilience through Torah study. And I look forward tomorrow night to resume the next cycle of Rambam with all of you. Rabbi, I think you're on mute.
I am sorry. Thank you very much, Avi, Dr. Rosenberg, for your time and offering us those words of inspiration. can you perhaps just for in a couple of moments share with us maybe something of the Rambam, maybe one of his medical discoveries that's relevant today that we might find fascinating, or a story that has played a part in your success, something tying in the Rambam and your role as a doctor?
So there are so many, it's hard to find one, right? So there are many writings of the Rambam that are not necessarily well publicized in the English language literature. And so, as an example, one volume from Fred Rosner is the Medical Legacy of Maimonides. And within this volume, one can see a subset of aphorisms and statements and testaments that the Rambam mentions. One thing that the Maimonides mentions as regards to illnesses of the chest is something which the Ibn Ezra, a couple of, I think a century or so later, in central Italy, commented on as well in his writings on the Chumash in Leviticus, where the Rambam, very much ahead of his time, comments on the importance of the right-sided heart in pulmonary circulation and in the oxygenation phase of circulation. This was a very unique concept, and in the Tanya, some of the Rambam's views on this can be explored, wherein the nefesh, the physical soul, the viable soul, relates to the right heart, wherein the blood gets its oxygenation. And I'm always, without experiment, the Rambam, when it came to medicine, was an empiricist and required evidence. What the evidence that the Rambam had in achieving something like this is really hard to understand and to fathom, or for that matter, how the Ibn Ezra came to a similar finding that the right-sided heart played a role in oxygenation, which was separate from the left side of the heart. I think the main message for me from the Rambam was really his devotion to his patients. He was a devoted scholar and a rabbi to his community, but at the same time was a tremendously devoted physician, and would put a significant portion of his day dedicated to the healing arts and to medicine, the practice of medicine. It was really one of the messages that you have to make part of your day for study and part of your day for healing. And I think that balance that he practiced himself is really a message that as a physician, I would try to emulate. And a message that I think he did as a physician, but everyone can implement in their own life. I really, truly believe that one's success as a physician comes from their ability to find another outlet to ground themselves in. And for those of us who are Torah observant, we find that outlet in the Torah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rosenberg. And as you know, the Talmud says, you save one life, you save the world. And you saved the world so many times over with so many people who really called upon you. And I know, like you said, it all comes from Hashem, but he chose a wonderful messenger. You being the one to be there for so many people for support and guidance during this very difficult time. So keep up your tremendous work. Don't leave, because we have an amazing speaker coming up, Rabbi Levi Jacobson. But I want to just say something that you just touched upon, I think leads into the next speaker. You said that the Rambam, Maimonides, was an empiricist. He was into reality. He wasn't into cloudy teachings. He was, everything had to make sense scientifically. And he saw godliness as something very real. So he wouldn't have put anything into his works unless he saw it as something real. So I think that's going to lead wonderfully into our next speaker, Rabbi Levi Jacobson. Rabbi Levi, I am going to unmute you. I'm not going to mute Dr. He spoke more like a rabbi than a doctor. We were getting nervous that he was I couldn't, do we call you Rabbi Rosenberg or Dr. Rosenberg? But you, are you both? Do you have smicha? Levi, you're on, Rabbi Levi Jacobson, you're unmuted. But I just want to tell one cute story, I don't cute story, but I'd like to, hear your feedback, Dr. Rosenberg. Is in 1985, I was in yeshiva, I was a rabbinical student in Montreal, Canada, and I was called home because there was an epidemic going on in New York, and maybe in some other communities, where it was a hepatitis epidemic in 1985. And it ended up that my father received it. He ended up being stricken by the epidemic, by the hepatitis. And he was literally in bed. He couldn't even turn over, couldn't get out of bed. And the doctors, of course, don't have this as an approved method of healing, but I believe it comes from the Rambam. If you take a pigeon and put it on the patient's belly, on the belly button, the pigeon sucks out the hepatitis. And I could only say that I saw it myself. I went to the chicken market, I bought a whole case of pigeons, and 21 pigeons were used on my father. And literally he went from not being able to move, and as each pigeon sucked out the illness, by the end of it, he was literally able to get out of bed for the first time in a week. And I saw it firsthand. And my understanding that this comes from the Rambam. Is this so? Did I hear right? Dr. Rosenberg, are you familiar? Are you muted? Why are you mute? I didn't mute you. 1 second. Go ahead.
I believe it's a Gemara.
Oh, it's a Gemara, not Rambam?
I think the Rambam mentions it, and I think the Chafetz Chaim mentions it in Mishnah Berurah as well. So it's multimodal, but the fact that the Rambam brought it down is evidence that it is a refuah that he trusted.
Okay, and it comes from Torah, not from the New England Journal of Medicine. So that speaks volumes. Anyhow, going back, first of all, I want to make an announcement again. Rabbi Rosenfeld, who you see wearing tefillin, it's because we have people from all over the world, and he's in Melbourne, Australia. He's not davening at 8 o'clock at night. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, again, thank you so much, Dr. Rosenberg. I know your time is so valuable. I hope you can stay with us and hear our next speaker, Rabbi Levi Jacobson, who is a renowned orator. He's a phenomenal Shliach, a Chabad emissary in Toronto, Canada. And we've asked him, as you heard Dr. Rosenberg said, that the Rambam Maimonides was an empiricist. Everything that he spoke about was real. He saw it authentic from the Torah. So when he chooses to conclude his entire works with the laws of Mashiach, there must be something very exciting for us to know about for the healing of the world, which is what our title tonight is all about, the healing of the world today, and what our future holds, that very soon, God willing, this world will become a much better place through the rebuilding of the third and final Holy Temple and the coming of Mashiach. Rabbi Levi Jacobson.
Thank you very much for the warm introduction, Rabbi Pinny. It was phenomenal to hear from Dr. Rosenberg, and thank you very much for the service that you've given to your community and to many Jewish communities that turn to you. I know a number of the schools that my children are in or consulting with you in the past recent while, so thank you very much. That's most appreciated. May Hashem bless you to be most successful, to bring much healing into the world in your area of influence. And may that spread, and may we have the complete and true healing that the world so desperately needs and wants. So what kind of healing are we talking about? We know Dr. Rosenberg didn't mention this, but there's a Hebrew saying, Yedias hamachla hichatzi refuah. The knowing the illness is half of the solution, half of the medicine. They say the story of this anecdote of this fellow that comes to an eye doctor, and he says that he has terrible pain in his right eye. The doctor looks, checks, gives him a medicine. Says, come back in a week, tell me how it is. Comes back in a week, it's just as bad. Doctor starts asking him questions. When does it hurt? He says, usually in the evening. So usually in the evening, the doctor gives him a different medicine. Comes back a week later, doctor, it still hurts. Asks some further questions. Any further specific times when it hurts? Yeah, he usually feels a pain when he's having his evening tea. I guess he had a British origin or something. So he has his evening tea and he feels particular pain in his right eye. The doctor thinks and thinks, maybe it's the flavor of the tea. After further investigation, the doctor suggests, why don't you remove the spoon from the teacup before you drink it? That might help this, and that might bring healing to your eye. This is the anecdote. Sometimes we look for solutions and sometimes we look for medication, and the answer could be very simple or it could be where we're not looking. So what kind of healing do we need? What is the healing that we're looking for? Obviously, all of us are affected in one way or another, more personally or less personally, with the recent epidemic. But I think that there's something much more going on. There's a lady in my community that works as a 911 dispatcher. And I'd asked her how work was recently. I had a conversation with her recently, and she shared something that I thought was very interesting. Obviously, it's anecdotal, but I think that there's something to it. She said that since March, and since we started dealing with the corona, at least in the true north in Canada, there was a very significant decrease in petty crime, and muggings and robberies. Very significant decrease. In fact, it almost didn't take place, or at least no calls came in. So I told her, oh, so you must have been bored. What were you doing all the time? What kind of calls were you fielding? She said, oh, you won't believe what happened. I said, what was that? There was a very frightening spike in two types of phone calls: domestic violence and suicide. These were the calls that came in. The 911, she said, literally off the hook. And to me, this is very tragic. And it tells me that, and it told me, and again, it's anecdotal, I didn't do further research on this, but it told me that there's something much deeper and much more personal that took place, that's taking place in the lives of people, often in life. And this is what Yedias HaMachla is. This is the first part of what I wanted to address tonight. What is the actual illness that we're dealing with? If you don't know what the illness is, you'll never be able to find healing. You'll never be able to find the solution. What is the medication that you're looking for? What type of medication do you need? Do you need more sleep? Do you need better food? Do you need antibiotics? Do you need to isolate? What do you need to do exactly, depending on what the problem is? So I'm suggesting tonight that the issue is, the challenge that we face, the difficulty that we face is golus, exile. How do you describe golus? How do you describe exile? And I think that this anecdotal piece of information that this lady, this 911 dispatcher shared with me, I think says a lot. What does it tell us? So let me go back for a moment. There were a number of introductions. Dr. Rosenberg mentioned this and Rabbi Pinny mentioned this. Maimonides, which tonight is a very, very special simcha, very interesting simcha. Tonight is, and tomorrow, this is the 17th of Tammuz, a day that we fast and we mourn over the destruction of the Holy Temple. But this year, it'll also be tinged with an element of joy, because we're concluding a cycle of the study of Rambam. Tens of thousands of people from around the world that have dedicated every single day of the year to study 3 chapters of Maimonides' great work will be concluding this monumental work tomorrow. And this monumental work that focuses on the legalities of Judaism, the very practical elements of Judaism, doesn't focus much on inspiration or spiritual concepts of fancy, but focuses on very pragmatic and practical Judaism. Concludes this great work with a number of chapters dedicated to the subject of Mashiach, of redemption, of what the world will look like at the time of redemption. The wolf will lie, the lamb, that famous lines that we know. But Maimonides discusses it more in a very practical sense. There will be no envy, no hunger, no wars. The world will be filled with the wisdom of God, will be consumed with understanding godliness. And the question is asked, why is Maimonides conclude his great work of laws with such ideas? Yes, it's one of the 13 principles of faith, but there are other sections of Maimonides that deal with faith matters. The first section of Maimonides deals with theology, understanding the unity of God and who God is and what God is. Perhaps the laws and the idea of Mashiach should have been included in that very section. Or where Maimonides discusses the building of the Holy Temple, maybe at that point he should have discussed the idea of Maimonides. And there are a number of, the idea of Mashiach, the idea of redemption. Why is it that Maimonides brings up this topic at the final chapters of his work? There are a number of answers that are suggested. I want to put forth a suggestion. There is a rule in Jewish teachings that hakol herlech achar achitum, that everything, that the conclusion is the bottom line. That's where everything is shared. That's where everything is told. That's the main focus. And we know this. When you make a presentation, you'll make sure that the final moment is when you try to really bring your point home. Throughout his 14 volumes of telling us how to live and sharing with us the wisdom of God, the final 2 chapters of Maimonides, he brings it all down to what is the bottom line? What is your destination? What is your goal? What is your objective? What is the purpose of doing all these mitzvahs? Yes, we do mitzvahs because that's what the Creator wants from us. But there's something fantastic that is taking place every time that you do a mitzvah. There's something called galus, exile, that each one of us, unfortunately at this point, are part of. And this is something that we must undo. And how do we undo that? By engaging in a meaningful, purposeful life, by engaging in a life of bringing redemption to ourselves and to the people around us, to our families, to our loved ones, to our communities, and by extension, when we do so, we bring redemption into the entire world. And this is what Maimonides tells us with every single mitzvah that you do. This is what you make happen. When you live a life of purpose and focus, you bring this reality into existence. So when you put on tefillin tomorrow morning, or if you still have time in the day today, if you live in Melbourne or elsewhere, or if you light Shabbos candles this Friday evening, it's not just a nice ritual or custom that you'll be engaging in, but you're bringing redemption into the world. You're bringing redemption into your own life. What do I mean by this? So going back to my 911 dispatcher, not mine, but she's part of my community that I'm blessed to work with, and she's helped many people in our city, so I'll consider her a friend. How unfortunate is it that when people are forced to be away from work and cannot travel on vacations, can't go to the parks, can't go to sports games, can't go to the theaters, they're forced to be home. One would hope that they're at a place of peace, of calmness, tranquility, time to bond with your loved ones. You can spend quality time with each other that you didn't have up until now. And how terribly tragic is it that when you don't have the distractions of day-to-day life, there are no errands to run, there are no places to hide. And how tragic is it that brings out, unfortunately, sometimes the worst in us. Why is that? How does that happen? Because that is a state of galus. Galus, exile, is often referred to as, things that our grandparents dealt with in Russia or in Poland or any of the other places that they had to go through hardship throughout our difficult and painful history. But much more than that, galus could be lived and experienced while we're living in very comfortable lives in North America or wherever, or Australia or Canada. But we live in a place lacking focus, lacking meaning, lacking purpose, living a life of fear, greed, addiction, lust, all covering up one fundamental point: not living a life of our neshama, of our true self, of who we are and what we are. They tell this anecdote about somebody that a genie told him, or whatever it is, told him that whatever you touch for the next 24 hours will turn to gold. And he was so excited because he lived a life of poverty and really didn't have much. And now he finally had this opportunity of everything he touches turns to gold, and it'll be his. So what do you do when you're told that anything you touch will now belong to you? So in good Jewish fashion, he wants to get as much real estate as he can. So he starts running, because every step he takes now becomes his. And he's running and running. And after 2 hours, he's out of breath. He can hardly run anymore. He starts walking as fast as he can. And he starts walking faster and slower. He becomes more tired. And another few hours of this going on. And now he can't even walk anymore. He's crawling. He hardly has any energy left, but he keeps on motivating himself. This is now mine. This is mine. This is mine. And he keeps on pushing himself. This is mine. And he's crawling on his hands and feet. This is mine. And he's totally exhausted, but he knows that he could still get some more. And he takes another step. He says, this is mine. He collapses and dies. Nothing is yours. This is tragically the story of our life. Sometimes we become so caught up with greed, with anger, with negative emotions, with lust, and often is just to cover up the painful reality that we're lacking meaning, that we're lacking purpose, that we're not really living for the purpose that we were put on earth. The reason that we were put on earth was in order to make this world into a beautiful, godly garden, in order to bring out the best blessings that the world has to offer. And unfortunately, we get caught up in golus and exile, which is every single one of us in our own ways, or I'm sorry if I'm talking for somebody that doesn't feel included in this, I'll speak for myself. We get caught up in garbage. We get caught up in different stuff. So what's the solution for that? Obviously, such a life doesn't lead to happiness, doesn't lead to living an energetic life, an optimistic life, a life of clarity, of confidence. It either causes us to live a life of quiet desperation. We just give up. You know what? I'm not idealistic. I'm not the 20-year-old anymore that I was. Well, let me just push through, have as many drinks as I can, until I won't be able to drink anymore or engage in this or that vice. Is there an alternative? Maimonides, Rambam makes it very, very clear. Not just there is an alternative, but this is the purpose of creation. When Hashem creates the world, his purpose was that you and I, that every single one of us, every single human being will have challenges, but yet rise above them. Learn how to look beyond the fog. Learn how to look beyond the difficulty, beyond the anger, beyond the greed, beyond the lust, beyond your challenges, melancholy, whatever it is that you deal with. Rise above it and challenge yourself and challenge those that are around you to bring more good into this world, holiness into this world. And for that purpose, Hashem gave us a neshama. Every single one of you have a neshama, a godly core that enables and empowers us to do the unbelievable. That godly core is confident, is happy, is focused, is calm, is at peace with themselves or the world around them. It's whatever you think is perfect is found within your neshama. It's an amazing aspect of yourself. Unfortunately, in school or friends or whatever it is, sometimes we overlook that, but that is the strongest, the most beautiful aspect of who you are and what you are. And this is what Yiddishkeit is to uncover your true potential and your true promise by uncovering the story of your neshama, the story of your soul. I'll give you an example. There was a chassid, a very pious man. I never met him. He passed away before I was born, but not much before I was born. Maybe Rabbi Pinny remembers him, or if there are some other Montreal fellows here. His name was Rabbi Peretz Mochkin. The Peretz. He was from the former Soviet Union. He made it in the early 70s. He made it to Canada, to Montreal, and he's inspired hundreds, perhaps thousands of people that went through, that sat at his shiurim and his classes, at his farbrengens. The story of Reb Peretz is a fascinating one, and I think to me it's a very challenging one as well. In order to make a living, I understand that there was a challenge with having proper kosher wine in Montreal when he was there, or kosher on a high standard that some people would like. So Reb Peretz would make wine, and this is how he supported himself, his family. And there were some other members of the community that would also make wine and also sell it, and they also supported themselves. Reb Peretz had, so to speak, a competitor. We'll call him by the name of Moshe. I don't know what his name was. And one year it happened. For people that are winemakers, they know that the primary business in the Jewish community, particularly if you're making your own personal wine with a high standard of kashrus, the primary time of business is before Pesach. One year, this competitor, Moshe, realized before Pesach that his new stock, his new batch of wine, all went sour, all went bad. And this was horrible. It was horrible for a number of reasons. Horrible because he wouldn't be able to make money, but much more than that, because he knew, as it is in business often, that when you cannot serve your customers once, next year, they don't come back so quickly. Next year, they find a different supplier, they find a different seller, and chances are that they stay with that seller for years to come as well. So obviously, this was devastating for him. So Moshe turned to Reb Peretz. He said, do me a favor, please. My wine all went bad. Would you sell me some wine? So I want to still serve my customers. Would you sell me some wine? Reb Peretz said, sure, with pleasure. He said, whenever you need wine, take whatever, you'll let me know what you need. I'm happy to give you whatever you want. And sure enough, this Moshe was able to serve all his customers before Pesach, which was the primary time of when he made his livelihood. After Pesach, Moshe turns to Reb Peretz. He says, Reb Peretz, I've served most of my customers. Let's discuss the dollars and cents, how much I owe you. And what does Reb Peretz tell him? You owe me nothing. You owe me nothing. I'm happy to have been able to help you. Now, Reb Peretz did this, he wasn't a wealthy man. Reb Peretz did this in order to support himself. One might think, okay, fine, sell it wholesale. If not retail, give him a good price. But why would you help your competitor and give it to him for free? No charge? Why would you do that? If a person is looking at things just from strictly business perspective, bad decision, not smart. But Reb Peretz was a different type of person. Reb Peretz lived a life of geula. He lived a life of redemption, which is he was free of greed and free of self-image issues. And he was free of fear of competitors. For those that remember him, speak about him, he was a happy man. He lived as if he had no care on his mind. He knew that there's only one being that controls the world. There's only one being that runs this world, and how much money he'll have or not have is not dependent on his business acumen, but basically on what the Creator decided that he should have. Reb Peretz knew that by helping another Yid, he's bringing redemption into the world. He's bringing redemption to his own life. He's not taking something away from himself. He's actually giving himself the greatest gift that he could give. This is a life of redemption. This is a life of neshama, of soul. When you start living based on the true value of who and what you are, the true purpose that Hashem put you on earth for. And this is bringing Mashiach into your life. And this is bringing Mashiach into the community, the world around you. And they tell a story of Eliyahu Hanavi. So there was at one point the Baal Shem Tov told one of his students that he should, that before Shabbos he should bring some food to a family. And he did that 1 week after another week after another week. And once, as he's about to walk into the house, it's clearly an impoverished family. As he's about to knock on the door to deliver them their food for the weekend for Shabbos, he hears the children crying to the mother and saying, "What's going to be for food this Shabbos?" And their mother telling their children that, you know what, Hashem sent Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu the prophet that Dr. Rosenberg mentioned earlier. Eliyahu the angel helped us last Shabbos and the Shabbos before and the Shabbos before. Surely Hashem will send Eliyahu to us this Shabbos as well. When we talk of Mashiach, there's the individual purpose and individual goal. When we live a life of godliness, a life of neshama, a life of purpose, of meaning, as it is in our core being, as described by Hashem, the creator, the master of the universe. And then there's the individual person that awakens every single one of us to bring this into the collective world, to collective consciousness. This is a personal Mashiach and general Mashiach. And this is what we look forward to. That each one of us do our utmost to uncover our personal redemption, our personal aspect, our personal Eliyahu Hanavi that we have within ourselves. And that for Mashiach, Hashem's anointed one, Hashem's chosen one, to bring this into the collective world at large. You might recall January 26th, if you're an NBA fan, it might be more on your memory radar, but I understand it was BCE, before Corona era. And for many of us, we hardly have a fog of a memory of then. But there was a terrible accident that happened on January 26th, where the helicopter that was carrying 9 people, including Kobe Bryant, Olav Shalom, had a terrible accident, and they all perished, they all died. Very tragic, very sad. At first it was thought that the helicopter crashed due to engine failure. Upon further investigation, it was learned that that was not the case. The helicopter pilot was a veteran pilot. His name was Ara Zobayan. And he found himself in a very deep fog. And at a certain point, he told air traffic control that he was climbing to 4,000 feet so he could get out of the fog. He could get out of the invisible environment that he was in. Just 30 meters from what was discovered later would be that point that he needed that was beyond the clouds. Tragically, instead of ascending those 30 meters, he started plummeting, descending very rapidly. The investigators that investigated this accident later on said that had he climbed for another 12 seconds, he would have reached that point that is beyond the clouds, and he would have had a clear blue sky, enabling him to pilot the helicopter to its destination. Another 12 seconds of ascending, he would have been there. The problem was that he was disoriented, and he didn't realize that he has another 12 seconds to ascend. And tragically, the accident happened. In our generation, in our time, sometimes we might find ourselves in a fog. Sometimes as we go through the journey of life, we encounter confusion, we encounter doubt, we encounter uncertainty. We encounter challenges of one or the other. But thank God, Hashem gave us a Rebbe who does guide us and does tell us, you're literally about to leave the fog. You're literally about to see the beautiful blue sky with not a doubt, with not a fog in your way. Just continue ascending another few seconds and you'll experience this. The Rebbe told us in 1991 that we're about to experience the redemption that all of mankind was waiting for since time immemorial. The Rebbe said at that time that all we need to do is increase in acts of goodness and kindness. Uncover who you are, uncover your true self, uncover your true identity, your neshama, your God-given soul that is so beautiful and so perfect. so pure, so godly. When we do so, surely you'll experience personal redemption. All of mankind will experience their redemption, and the fast day tomorrow will turn into the ultimate Yom Tov, the greatest Yom Tov, not just of concluding the Talmud, the study of Maimonides, of Rambam, but it will turn into the holiday that we're looking forward to, the complete and true redemption with Mashiach. Amen. I want to conclude with some practical suggestions. First of all, I would like to invite you to speak to your local Chabad rabbi, or you could check on different websites of joining the cycle of studying Maimonides, studying Rambam. In addition, what could be done for you to uncover the redemption, Mashiach, within yourself, your Yechida, that core of yourself, is by studying about Mashiach, studying about redemption. That in itself creates a longing and a desire to climb out of that cloud, to climb for those additional 12 seconds. Do another mitzvah, another act of kindness, and may you be successful, and may we all be successful, and we have the ultimate success. Thank you very much, Rabbi Pinny.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Jacobson. Very powerful, very inspirational. And may your words ring true, that we merit the ultimate redemption. And thank you again, Rabbi Dr. Avi Rosenberg. Thank you for staying, and thank you for your words.